Hey everyone, it's Lily. Thanks for tuning in for my second video. I'm really excited because now I can actually get to put my hands in some dirt and show you guys a few things. So today I thought we'd start with everyone's current favorite apparently right now, which is just Hoyas. So I went through the porch and I picked a few of my favorites. So I thought we could start by me just showing off my favorite Hoyas. They look pretty cool right now, so I'm really excited to show you. I don't think I'm showing them in any specific order. I think I like them all equally. So with that being said, I'm gonna start with this one. So this is my Hoya Clemensiorum. I probably said that wrong and it's okay. I'm always going to pronounce every single Hoya name wrong. I'm just warning you right now. It's going to be a thing and I'm not going to be able to change that anytime soon. So this Hoya I got from Rick a while ago. It was just one leaf. It was giant. I mean, the one original leaf was so big that I had to put this pot inside another pot so I could raise the pot higher to be able to put it outside, because the leaf was so big that it was like down to here. So I couldn't I couldn't just put the pot down. It was like curved weird. Anyways, it makes me very excited about growing out this Hoya, because every single leaf that you see here I've grown myself. The original leaf that was on it ended up dying a couple months after I put it outside, but I'm very excited about this Hoya because it has the potential for the most ginormous leaves you could possibly see on a Hoya. I mean, I'm expecting like by next year I'll have leaves about this length, because I've only had this Hoya for about 5 months and it has already grown all of this, and as you can tell, the runner is like way down to here, and it's working on a couple leaves right now. So I'm just really excited for the potential, and so I'll show you a couple of my favorite things about this Hoya. So the first thing is, honestly, it looks like this Hoya was around when we had dinosaurs, because it just looks really old, like prehistoric. It just doesn't even look like it should be real or really exist. The leaves themselves are super thick and hard to the touch, but I think my favorite part about the leaves is the edges. They're like razor sharp. I mean, they won't cut you, but they're pretty cool to just like run your finger down them. And then it's also textured on top. Hopefully it'll focus on this, but the veins on top of the leaf kind of are raised a little bit. So when you touch the top of the leaf, you can feel the veins on the leaf, and it's really cool. My other favorite thing about this Hoya is the back of the leaves. You can see the vein looks like this maroon red color, and it's very beautiful. It's a really dark leaf in the back, as you can tell here too. So that's my Hoya Clemensiorum. If you don't already have one, I highly recommend getting one. It's very beautiful, it really is. So I'm gonna move on to one that is slightly different. So this Hoya, it doesn't look like a Hoya. It's my Hoya Insularis, and I like it because it doesn't look like a Hoya. It has these like very, very long, I mean, they're almost like the size of my palm. Let's see. Okay, it's hard, but it's almost the size of my palm. The leaves are very long and they're very thick. They're very narrow, and then they also have like an indentation in the middle. So the vein in the very middle of the leaf, it's indented inward, and then the back of the leaves are like almost red. They look very, very beautiful. When they first come out, you can see it's like all red, and then as the leaf matures, it turns like this like green color, but also the main vein in the middle stays that red color, and it's very beautiful. I've had it for about a year, And when I first got it, it had like maybe 5 leaves in it. But it has grown a lot since. I have not propagated it because I really just don't want to cut it. But it has like gone around this copper trellis twice now, and it has all these new growth points that are coming from the main stem. So I'm very excited for it. It doesn't look real. I mean, it's just really beautiful. I love how dark the veins are, and I love how like the petioles are also that maroon red color. So you can get like a really nice contrast between the dark green of the leaf and the veins, and also the tendrils are that like red maroon color. So it just looks really cool together. And it's really easy. I have had 0 issues with her. So you should get a Hoya Insularis. It's really cool. My next one that I picked today was a Hoya Megalaster. So this Hoya, not only do I love the leaves on the Hoya, I mean, to me they look like kind of like turtle shells. They are pretty thick, they're very shiny. You can't really see the veins as much, but the leaf is very textured. But the reason I love this Hoya so much, other than, you know, the beautiful leaves, is the blooms on them. They're, I mean, absolutely stunning. It bloomed twice for me this year, and it was probably my proudest moment since I started growing Hoyas. Just being able to get this Hoya to bloom. You can see the peduncle right here. And I'm really excited for its potential next year because it has doubled in size since the last time it bloomed. So I'm very excited. The blooms on it are like this big, each one of them, and the second time it bloomed it had a cluster of like 6 of them, and it was just really beautiful, this like super dark maroon purple color. And it looks waxy and shiny, and it just doesn't look real. So if you don't have a Megalaster, I highly recommend getting one. It has one of the biggest size blooms you'll ever see in a Hoya, and it's just absolutely stunning. So I am obsessed with it, and I hope it gets even bigger, and I hope it doesn't stop blooming for me next year. So that's Megalaster. Then I picked this lady. So this is a Hoya Pachyclada Albomarginata. So Albomarginata just means that the margins are the part that's variegated. This was one of the very first Hoyas that I was really obsessed with when I first started getting into them. It has super thick, like succulent-y leaves. I mean, the leaf is like super thick, but it's still bendy. It's very textured. It's got like raised leaves. I don't know how to describe it, but I think what I also really like about it is it doesn't have just a variegation on the outer edges, but it also has like gray variegation on top of the green parts of the leaf. So it's really stunning. I've had it for about 2 years now, and I recently cut it, which absolutely broke my heart, but it already has a new growth point right there. It's one of those Hoyas that you want to make sure, you know, while I'm here, that you want to make sure that you keep up with trellising it if you are going to trellis it, because if you don't do it, like if you don't clip the plant to your bamboo while the stem is kind of soft, you'll have a hard time with it, and you might even break it because it's so succulent-y, it's so thick, that I feel like you would snap it if you don't trellis it early enough. It's absolutely stunning, and that's my Pachyclada. And then the next one that I picked is my Hoya Meredithii. I have 2 of them because I really like my Meredithii. So here's one. And here's the other one. So I'm going to show you both. Well, I wanted to show you both because they both have very cool leaves that I wanted to make sure I showed you. I've had both of them for a little over a year. When I first got them, they only had one leaf, and I've kept them separate just because I wanted to keep them in small pots and I didn't want to overcrowd the Hoya, and if I did something wrong with one of them, I didn't want to lose the second one at the same time, so I've kept them separate. Also, the leaves are so big that I would have a very difficult time being able to keep up with trellising 2 Hoyas in one pot, and it'd probably outgrow the trellis way too fast. So I'm gonna start with this one. And the reason I really wanted to show you this plant is because it has so many new leaves coming, and it has not stopped growing. I also like, well, first of all, here's a baby leaf. That's how little they look. And they look like it's almost like a dark brown, reddish brown color. And then all the leaves, you can tell exactly where the sun is hitting it because they're all facing in the same exact direction and they're kind of growing one on top of the other. And I just really love how it looks here. It's funny because the plant, the Hoya that is right next to it, kind of takes up all the light that's right here. And so you can really tell how much the plant is adapting to the place where it is right now, just by seeing how it looks. This one is in a very, very tiny pot, but the plant is so big that I have it like triple potted. See, like if I try to put this down, it doesn't work. So there's a big pot and then another pot inside that big pot. And then I have these shards from when I broke a terracotta pot. And what I did is I put the little pot in there and then I wedged the little pot with the pieces of the broken terracotta. And now the little pot doesn't move, and it lives happy in here. That way it doesn't topple over, or if there's like a little wind, I won't lose the Meredithii. So now we'll focus on my bigger one that I repotted recently. She's in a slightly bigger pot than that one, but only slightly. The pot is still 4 inches. It's just like a wider bottom. I believe it's an azalea terracotta pot because it's not as long as the regular 4-inch ones. And I actually really like those because it makes it wider on top, but it's more shallow. So there's 2 things I wanted to show you about this Meredithii. The first thing is this leaf in the front of it that is, I call it my mutant leaf. It's mutated and it's growing 2 leaves in one. And it just looks really, really cool. I first noticed it when I was prepping my Hoyas for the hurricane, for Hurricane Ian. I had to move the Hoya out of its place, and then when I had the pot in my hand, I noticed it, and it was really small, and it was really cool. And honestly, I was expecting that leaf to get bigger, but it stayed smaller than the leaves that came right before it, which was weird, but whatever. It's beautiful, and I feel very lucky to have it. The next leaf I want to show you is this last leaf that it gave me. And I mean, just look at how big that leaf is. It's like the size of my face. And it's not even finished growing. You can tell because the leaf is soft and I'm still able to bend it. These here I'm able to bend also, but they're harder to the touch. And the color looks slightly different. This one is more shiny. It starts to lose a little bit of its shine as it gets older. And then the other thing you'll notice is that the veins on the older leaves like come out a little bit, so you can actually feel the veins on the leaves. But you can only do that once the leaf is done growing. And that's it. That's my Meredithii. Alright, so now that I showed you my favorite Hoyas, I'm going to repot one of them. My smaller Meredithii is still in this little tiny 3-inch pot. I actually got it at Michael's. They have pretty nice little tiny 3-inch pots. Anyway, so it's definitely needing a repot. I can see the roots from the top soil. I don't think you can see it at that angle, but I can actually see the roots from the top, and I know I haven't repotted this since, I want to say I repotted it in January. I grow my Hoyas in Florida, so I can pretty much repot at any point I want. I don't have to stick to spring. So I'm just going to repot her, and I'm going to show you the mix that I'm going to put her in, so you kind of get an idea for the type of potting mix that I use. So I already have some pre-mixed in here, so I'm just going to show you its composition. I mix my own potting mix for all of my plants because I don't trust the store stuff, and it caused a lot of fungus gnats issues in the past. Also, this way I can just control the proportion of what goes in there. And I don't know, I've gotten used to it over the last couple of years. So what I have here is I have cocoa fiber or cocoa core. I have cocoa husks. I have perlite. It's the big chunky, I think it's like number 3 by Mother Earth. I also have worm castings. You can kind of see there's some like big chunks, but it's like in a powder, and it looks really chunky. Oh, I also have Osmocote slow release fertilizer in here, and I have systemic granules. The systemic is just to make sure that it doesn't get mealy bugs or stuff like that. If it does happen to get a pest, it should take care of it and then for about the next 6 months, unless it's like a really bad infestation. So anyways, as you can tell, it's really chunky. You want it to be really chunky because you don't want the Hoya to sit in a soil that is too dense, because then the roots are gonna rot. It's gonna maintain that moisture for too long, and the roots don't like to stay moist that long. So you want something that's very chunky, but at the same time you don't want to just use big chunks. You want to use something that'll absorb some of that moisture and keep it in there for a little bit. So that's why I use a little bit of the cocoa fiber. So not just the big chunky stuff, but also just a little bit of the fiber, so it doesn't dry out like in a day. So what I'll do, I have this like old chopstick that we don't use, and so I use this to soften up the soil a little bit. So since this Hoya is so top heavy, what I had to do is add a second bamboo stick and attach the bamboo stick to the trellis, because it just kept toppling forward. So eventually that'll have to come off, so I'll take it off now. All right, I keep the Hoya in the trellis when I go repot it because I don't want it flailing everywhere. I'd rather just like keep it tight in there. And then I'm just gonna repot her into this like slightly bigger pot. It's the pot that if you remember, I told you that I had it in 3 different pots because it was just so heavy. So this pot actually fits in here. It's going from a 3-inch pot to like, I think it's like 4.5 inches. And it's an azalea type terracotta pot, so it's not too tall like the regular terracotta 4 inches that are about this tall. This one's slightly shallower because I don't want to give it too much soil. So I'm just going to use my little stick to loosen it a little bit from the sides. You don't want to like break up too many of the roots while you're doing this, so if you can help it a little bit, that'd be great. And then let's see, there we go. All right, so it was pretty root bound. But Hoyas like to be root bound. I mean, they don't like to be swimming in a whole bunch of extra soil. So I'm kind of happy that it looks this way, because it does, while it does look root bound in the bottom, you can tell it's root bound, it has enough room in here to still be able to grow the roots a little bit longer. And so all I'm gonna do is just kind of like wake up the roots. I kind of massage it a little bit to loosen it up, and I don't force a lot of the soil off because I don't want to break the roots, but if you can get just a little bit off, that's good. All right, yeah, I'm not able to get much of it off right now. So I'd rather just leave it alone. That way I know I'm not breaking the roots. But also notice that because I kept it in the trellis, I'm able to just like hold it like this. And the structural integrity, I guess, of the vine is still there. So all I'm going to do, oh, wow, look, would you look at that? That's why you always check. So the little mesh that I had at the bottom of the terracotta pot was stuck in the roots. So I guess make sure that your little mesh thingy isn't stuck in the roots before you put it back in a new pot. All right, so the roots look a little bit looser. So now we'll move on. So here's a new pot. I did clean this pot before I ever put that pot in here. So this stuff is just from watering with systemic and fertilizer and stuff like that. So I'm gonna put the little mesh back in the bottom. And then, all right. So now that that's there, I'm just going to plop this in here. You know, I think I'm still gonna use this bamboo stick because I think it'll still need it. So I'm gonna do that now before I fill it up with soil. So, there, that's good. All right, that's good for now. So I'm gonna pull up the plant a little bit because I wanna make sure some of this potting mix goes under the plant. And then I usually just do it with my hands because the pots are so small, and I use my fingers to push the soil in a little bit. And because the Hoya is extra tall, you want to make sure that the soil is tight in there so it doesn't flail around all the time. But you can see how chunky my mix is. Here. You want it to be extra chunky. You want the roots to be able to breathe while they're getting water. You don't want it to like sit in there drowning in water and not be able to breathe. There's still a little section here. So these leaves are so big, I'm barely able to get the soil in there. But as you can tell, I'm like pushing down the chunks as much as possible so that the trellis like maintains its integrity, I guess. All right. That's pretty tight in there. All right, let me make sure. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, and that's how you repot a Meredithii. All right, so now that we've repotted the Hoya, you gotta water it. And I try to always water the Hoya when I transplant the Hoya into a new pot. I try to always give it some sort of like vitamin solution to help the transplanting process. The last thing you want is to have a happy, healthy Hoya go through too much trauma during repotting. So you want to help the roots transition in one way or another. So I have two products that I alternate between. I don't really have a preference as far as which one I use more. I started out with Hormex. It's a B1 vitamin solution, and then I also use Super Thrive. I love Super Thrive. I use it on a lot of plants. My roses out front love it. My hibiscus love Super Thrive as well. But I've only ever used Hormex for my Hoyas. So again, this one is a vitamin B1 and hormone solution, and then this one is a vitamin solution by Super Thrive. So today what I did is I put a quarter teaspoon of the Super Thrive vitamin solution in a gallon pot, a gallon bottle of, well, it used to be a milk bottle. Not that you care that it matters, but whatever. So I measured a quarter teaspoon of Super Thrive and I put it in here. And now I'm just gonna use this to water the Hoya. When you water a Hoya, believe it or not, they like a lot of water. They like to be thoroughly watered every single time you water it. The key is to make sure that the Hoya dries out completely I even let my Hoyas like stay dry for like 2-3 days before I water it again. Sometimes they like to struggle a little bit and they appreciate that water more when you do water it. So here we have the giant Meredithii that I just repotted. I'm gonna put it in here because I don't want water running out everywhere. And I'm just gonna use the water with the Super Thrive vitamin solution, and I'm just gonna water it thoroughly. So this is what I mean by water thoroughly. Like you water so that everything in there soaks up all that water, and then you have a bunch of water draining out. Normally, I don't recommend reusing water that you used to water something with, because there could be pests in there like brood mealies or anything like that, and you don't want to use that water that has pests in a different plant. But I know for a fact my Hoya Meredithii doesn't have any pests because I looked at the roots and I've treated it with systemic drench. It has systemic granules and I know it's a healthy Hoya. So I'm gonna use this leftover water and I'm just gonna throw it in my roses, because why not? So now, because it was transplanted, I wouldn't put it right back in its regular spot right away, because it gets like super high indirect light in the afternoon. So I don't want to shock it too much. And so for the next couple of days, I'll just give it slightly less light than I normally give it. So I'll leave the pot on the floor instead of putting it high up on the shelf like I normally do. But in a couple days or so, I will put it right back to its regular spot and it should be fine. The key is when you transplant, you don't want to further stress the roots by not watering it when you transplant it, and then by waiting too long to water after. So I watered it today. I'm gonna leave it in less light for the next couple of days. Still, I would say medium indirect. And then in about 4 days, I'll check it. If it looks too dry, then I'll water it again. You don't want to shock it by letting it dry out for too long. And that's it. That's how I repot my Hoyas. All right, guys. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed my favorite Hoyas, and hopefully you found at least 1 or 2 things useful out of everything I said today. If you have any comments, if you have any questions or any suggestions for what I should cover next, feel free to leave it in the comments. And as always, do all the YouTube stuff so that my posts will show up on your feed. You should like it, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, do whatever it is that you want to do, but do something. So that's all I got. I will see you guys back here next week. Hopefully I'll have another video up for you guys next Sunday. Actually, next week, Saturday, I have a plant sale in Bel Rico, and I'll be doing that plant sale with Rick, so I'll probably take some footage of the plant sale and share that with you guys during next week's video. So hopefully I'll see you guys back here next week. All right, bye!